man in the UK has been cleared of murder after serving 38 years in jail. His conviction was quashed after new DNA evidence emerged in what's being called the biggest miscarriage of justice in British history.
In 1986, the brutal murder of 21-year-old Diane Sindall sent shockwaves through Birkenhead. She had been attacked and left in a dark alleyway, a horrifying crime that triggered the largest manhunt Merseyside had ever seen. 29-year-old Peter Sullivan was arrested and soon after convicted. Despite an initial series of apparent confessions and retractions during intense police questioning, Peter insisted he was innocent. For more than 38 years, he and his defense team fought to prove that the police had the wrong man. In May 2025, the Court of Appeal agreed and ruled him an innocent man. Peter Sullivan's conviction was quashed, ending what is now believed to be the longest-running miscarriage of justice in British history.
It's taken nearly 4 decades, but Peter Sullivan finally left prison a free man. Not angry, he said, not bitter, just ready to live out the rest of his life in peace. It is a constant reminder for the people of Merseyside, a memorial to Diane Sindall, it says, and all of our sisters who've been raped and murdered.
But if Peter didn't kill Diane Sindall, then who did? This is the case of a young woman's tragic death and a man's decade-long battle to clear his name. Diane Sindall was a well-known and much-loved figure in her hometown of Seacombe, described by her loved ones as a vivacious, bubbly, happy-go-lucky girl with her whole life ahead of her. Diane was engaged to be married and divided her time between her fiancé's home in Seacombe and her parents' house in Tranmere. She loved to cook, had many friends, and was known for her warm, outgoing nature. Her mother said she was really a good family girl and everyone liked her. At 21 years old, Diane worked as a florist in her family's well-established business and was often seen driving her blue van through the local streets, delivering flowers. In 1986, determined to build a future with her fiancé, she took on extra shifts behind the bar at the Wellington pub in Bebbington, 5 miles from home, to save money for their upcoming wedding. But on the night of the 1st of August, 1986, while working at the pub, Diane was seen for the last time. Her bright future was cruelly and suddenly taken from her that night. On the night of Friday, the 1st of August 1986, after finishing her shift at the Wellington pub around 11:45 p.m, Diane Sindall left to drive home to Seacombe in her blue Fiat van. On the way, her van ran out of petrol in Birkenhead, forcing her to continue on foot along the well-lit main road, Borough Road. It's unclear whether Diane was heading to an all-night garage looking for a taxi or walking to a friend's house. Between midnight and 12:20 a.m, multiple witnesses saw her walking towards Tranmere. A taxi driver said that he saw a man and a woman arguing at around 12:10 a.m. on Borough Road. He said the fellow put his hand out towards the girl. They appeared to know each other, but they were definitely arguing. Then, just 500 yards from an all-night garage, Diane was attacked. Her attacker dragged her into a dark alleyway off the main dual carriageway, where she was sexually assaulted and violently beaten. 12 hours later, Diane's half-naked body was discovered by a dog walker in an alleyway back up Borough Road. She had suffered a brutal assault. She had a fractured skull, facial injuries, extensive bruising, mutilated breasts, and severe genital injuries. It was believed she survived for some time after the attack, ultimately dying from a brain hemorrhage caused by repeated blows to the head, possibly with a 2-foot crowbar. A pathologist later testified in court that Diane's injuries were the very worst he had ever seen on a body outside of a road traffic accident. News of Diane's death broke the following day, on the 2nd of August 1986, devastating the local community. Outside the Sindall family home on Cressington Avenue in Tranmere, neighbours wept openly in the street. Diane Sindall's murder sparked widespread revulsion, fear, and anger across Merseyside. Women and girls became afraid to walk alone. John Thompson, a journalist who covered the case for the Liverpool Echo, said fathers, boyfriends, brothers and husbands would pick women up from work and tell them not to leave the premises until they were right outside the door. There was real terror, Diane's murder was different. It was horrific. Quickly, however, the response from local women turned from fear and sadness to anger. In March 1987, around 300 women walked through a blizzard in Birkenhead under banners headed "Reclaim the Night" to remember Diane. The movement had been set up in Leeds in 1977 during Yorkshire Ripper Peter Sutcliffe's killing spree as a response to police advice that women should stay indoors. Diane Sindall's murder prompted the largest manhunt in Merseyside police history, with officers speaking to around 3,000 people. At one point, it was even suggested that every man in Birkenhead might be interviewed. The investigation was led by Superintendent Tom Baxter, deputy head of Merseyside CID, alongside Superintendent Roger Corker. Despite the attack taking place near a busy road on a summer night, police had no eyewitnesses. This was before the era of widespread CCTV, so detectives turned to the public for help. A reenactment of Diane's final walk aired on BBC Crimewatch, watched by millions. The broadcast left a deep impression, with it being etched on every woman's memory.
Could you just show us on the map now, those 3 places where Diane was seen that Friday night on the 1st of August? That's where she ran out of petrol.
Diane ran out of petrol on Borough Road opposite the Auto Safety Centre. She left her vehicle, and then there are 3 sightings of her as she walked along Borough Road out of the Birkenhead town centre.
Yet despite the national exposure, weeks passed with no breakthrough. No one had seen Diane enter the alleyway, and the circumstances surrounding the attack remained unclear. Some residents reported hearing screams between 12:30 and 2 o'clock in the morning, the window of time when Diane was believed to have encountered her killer. Finally, however, after 8 weeks of intensive investigation, police identified a suspect, 29-year-old Peter Sullivan. On the night of Diane's murder, Peter Sullivan, an unemployed labourer and father of one, had been playing darts at the Crown Hotel on Conway Street in Birkenhead, just 10 minutes from the alleyway where Diane was later found. Witnesses said he had been drinking heavily after his team lost and left the pub around 11:30 p.m, staggering back to his maisonette in Queensberry Gardens. Peter Sullivan, described as a quiet loner, had a record of 18 previous convictions for minor offences like petty theft and car theft, and had served time in jail. He once described himself as a born liar. The day after Diane's body was discovered, some of her clothing was found burning in a small fire on Bidston Hill. A passing couple told police they had seen a man running from the bushes, someone they believed was Pete, but when shown an identity parade, they failed to pick him out. After the Crimewatch reenactment aired, more witnesses came forward, reporting the fire.
The fire was discovered about 8 p.m. on the evening of Sunday the 3rd of August. We do feel that the person who was burning Diane's clothing was disturbed. We are anxious to that end to trace anybody who was on the Bidston Hill area that evening, whether it be anybody who witnessed the fire, whether they saw anybody acting suspiciously, or whether they saw anybody carrying a bundle of clothing, or maybe carrying a bag which could possibly have contained that clothing.
Their descriptions led police back to Peter Sullivan. A neighbour also reported that Peter had borrowed a crowbar shortly before the murder, a potential match for the weapon used to fracture Diane's skull. However, Peter denied having it at the time of the killing. Brown fibres found at the crime scene were matched to a garment in Peter's home. It was also noted that he had abruptly left Merseyside for London between Diane's murder and his emergence as a suspect. Dental impressions and other forensic findings reportedly linked him to the scene. The ferocity of the attack sparked media nicknames like the Beast of Birkenhead, the Mersey Ripper, and the Wolfman. Due to all the circumstantial evidence, Peter was arrested on the 23rd of September. During interviews, he gave police a series of conflicting accounts about his whereabouts that night. Initially, he denied involvement and gave an alibi, but the following day, according to court documents, he broke down in tears during questioning and confessed to the murder, claiming he couldn't remember why he did it because he had been so drunk. That crucial admission, however, was never recorded. At the time of the confession, Peter was not given legal representation or access to an appropriate adult. Police justified this by saying they feared sensitive information might leak and hinder the investigation. When Peter finally saw a solicitor on the 25th of September, he retracted the confession. Later, he claimed the confession had been coerced, the result of verbal abuse and physical assault by police officers. But by then, the damage was done. Peter Sullivan was charged and would stand trial for the murder of Diane Sindall. In November 1987, Peter Sullivan stood trial at Liverpool Crown Court, charged with the murder of Diane Sindall, but he denied the charge. The prosecution's case relied heavily on bite mark analysis and circumstantial evidence. 2 dental experts testified that bite marks found on Diane's body matched Peter's teeth. One had initially doubted the match, but later agreed with the prosecution. Another odontologist told the jury the marks were as unique as a fingerprint and just as conclusive, and matched the accused perfectly. Peter had also given conflicting accounts of his movements the night Diane was killed, along with unrecorded confessions made without a solicitor or appropriate adult present. His defense argued he had learning difficulties and was highly suggestible. However, in the end, the retracted confessions, the bite marks and circumstantial evidence about his whereabouts helped bring a conviction. After taking 9 hours over 2 days to reach a verdict, he was unanimously found guilty by a jury. Peter Sullivan was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 16 years. Outside court, Diane's fiancé David Beattie said, "I am so relieved. He has got what he deserved." In a sense, he could not get what he deserved. In an ideal world, his life would have been taken and Diane would have been brought back to me. I just hate him for what he did. On the night Peter was sentenced, he stood silently in the dock. His mother screamed and his sister fainted and had to be revived. The Liverpool Echo's front page on the 5th of November 1987 featured a photo of Peter as a boy with the headline, "Prayer Boy Who Became a Murderer." The paper ran a 4-page special with interviews from loved ones on both sides. Peter's lawyer, Gareth Williams, issued a statement on behalf of the family. The family wish it to be known they are extremely distressed at the verdict. They remain convinced of his innocence in this matter and will continue their efforts to clear his name. His parents, Margaret and Charles Sullivan, refused to accept the verdict. They insisted Peter was incapable of such violence. Margaret said, "My son is no monstrous killer. He is incapable of something like this, and finding him guilty makes a farce out of British justice. The whole of Birkenhead knows he is innocent. I am closer to Peter than anyone else in the world. If he had done this murder, I would know about it. Deep down, I would know Peter had done it, and I know he has not. I find it hard to believe this has happened. My nerves are on edge, and many a night I go to bed, and I just cry. It is so devastating. Peter cannot believe it has happened to him. He had everything he wanted, a wife, which he never thought he would have, and a little boy. He has counted down the days to his trial, saying he will be glad when it is over because he will be coming home." His father Charles added, "Peter does respect women, but basically he is a complete coward. He is a very placid guy who will do anybody a good turn, really harmless. If you spoke to him abruptly, he would walk away. He is no one who would stand his ground or put up a fight. He is adamant he has not harmed this girl." After his 1987 conviction, Peter was initially advised he had no grounds for appeal. However, he and his legal team continued to fight to overturn the verdict. In 2008, Peter applied to the Criminal Cases Review Commission, but it declined to refer his case to the Court of Appeal, citing expert opinions that further testing was unlikely to reveal a usable DNA profile. In 2019, Peter made a separate attempt to appeal, this time focusing on the reliability of the bite mark evidence. The High Court rejected the application in 2021, ruling that the bite mark evidence had not been central to the original prosecution case. Peter submitted a new application to the Criminal Cases Review Commission in March 2021. He raised concerns about his police interviews, the bite mark evidence, and the alleged murder weapon. This time, the Criminal Cases Review Commission commissioned new forensic testing and uncovered DNA from an unknown man. Experts believe the DNA came from semen recovered at the crime scene. According to Merseyside police, there have been significant developments in the use and understanding of DNA evidence in criminal investigations that was still in its infancy at the time of the murder of Diane. These developments have led to the discovery of the new evidence. The Criminal Cases Review Commission also raised concerns that Peter may have been denied legal representation during his initial police interviews, potentially breaching the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, 1984. Finally, in November 2024, the Criminal Cases Review Commission announced it would refer Peter's conviction to the Court of Appeal due to the discovery of new DNA evidence. In March 2025, the Crown Prosecution Service was given until the 4th of April to confirm whether it would oppose Peter's appeal. The hearing was scheduled to take place before Easter. At a preliminary hearing at the Court of Appeal in London, Lord Justice Holroyd stated, "New evidence establishes the presence of DNA from an unknown male, believed to have originated from sperm cells." The Crown Prosecution Service confirmed it did not dispute the validity of the new forensic results, and so the full Court of Appeal hearing was scheduled to begin at 10:30 a.m. on the 13th of May 2025. On the 13th of May 2025, at the Court of Appeal in London, lawyers for Peter Sullivan argued that new DNA evidence would clear Peter. This evidence, from semen found on Diane Sindall's body, belonged to an unknown man, not Peter. Peter's counsel, Jason Peter KC, told the court, "The prosecution's case was this was one person who carried out the assault on the victim, and the evidence here now is that this one person was not the defendant. There was no evidence to suggest there was more than one person, and if there was, there is the absence of the defendant's DNA." The defense also challenged the bite mark evidence, quoting a forensic expert who said, "It is not a reliable form of science." Jason Peter KC elaborated, "There is no scientific basis for the identification of human bite marks on skin. That evidence in this case was of the poorest quality." Peter's retracted confessions were also questioned. Mr. Peter said, "The significant admissions took part outside of a recorded interview, so not in accordance with the codes of practice. The appellant was extremely vulnerable in an interview situation because of his limited intellectual functioning and his ability to be influenced, manipulated and controlled, and his ability to engage in make-believe." He emphasized that Peter had learning difficulties and lacked an appropriate adult or legal representation during crucial early interviews. That would happen now. In those early stages, the interviews were unrecorded. The first significant admissions occurred in a single day over the course of 4 interviews. After a short recess, Lord Justice Holroyd addressed the court.
"The evidence given at trial on the issues of the bite mark evidence and the reliability of confessions now has to be considered in the context of the DNA evidence as to the involvement of an unknown man. The new DNA evidence inevitably weakens each strand of the circumstantial evidence presented at trial, regardless of how strong those strands, whether individually or collectively, appeared at the time. For those reasons, we decline to receive as fresh evidence the statements of Professor Pretty and Professor Shepherd, and we reject grounds 2 and 3. However, we receive as fresh evidence the statements of Miss Alexander and Mr. MacDonald. In the light of that fresh evidence, we allow the appeal on ground 1. We quash the conviction. As we have noted, the respondent very properly does not seek a retrial. The appellant must therefore be released from custody.
Peter, now aged 68, appeared via video link from HMP Wakefield, wearing glasses and a buttoned shirt, his grey hair cut short. He held his hand to his mouth and cried as the judgment was read out. At 2:15 p.m, he was released from prison. Outside court, Peter's solicitor read a statement on his behalf.
"I lost my liberty 4 decades ago over a crime I did not commit. We now know how very different the times we live in are, from scientific advances legal practice, and methods of investigation and questioning by the police. What happened to me was very wrong, but it does not detract or minimise that all of this happened off the back of a heinous and most terrible loss of life. I did not commit murder or unlawfully take the life of any person throughout the span of my own. As God is my witness, it is said, the truth shall set you free. It is unfortunate that it does not give a timescale. As we advance towards resolving the wrongs done to me, I am not angry, I am not bitter, I am simply anxious to return to my loved ones and family, as I've got to make the most of what is left of the existence I am granted in this world. I am aware of how cruel time can be to a person stripped of their youth and mobility, sight and hearing. I have had to silently endure this and watch it stripped from me in the worst environment imaginable. I will not comment on the horrors done to me over that time. There are too many. With this, I humbly request that you allow me my privacy while I begin repairing what I may from the driftwood that is my life. Finally, I would like to say how sorry I am to the family of Diane Sindall, who have now got to come to terms with the death of their daughter being down to someone else, and I long to see the right thing done for this horrible crime so that they will find peace.
Peter's sister, Kim Smith, told reporters,
At the end of the day, it's not just us. We haven't won. Peter hasn't won, and neither has the Sindall family. They've lost their daughter. They're not going to get her back. We've got Peter back, and now we've got to try and build a life around him again. So at the end of the day, we feel sorry for the Sindalls.
In 2023, Merseyside police reopened the investigation into Diane Sindall's 1986 murder and issued a fresh appeal for information, promising they would continue the search for her real killer. Detective Chief Superintendent Karen Jondrill said, "Our thoughts remain with the family and friends of Diane Sindall, who continue to mourn her loss and will have to endure the implications of this new development so many years after her murder. We are committed to doing everything within our power to find whom the DNA, which was left at the scene, belongs to." Unfortunately, there is no match for the DNA identified on the National DNA Database. We can confirm that the DNA does not belong to any member of Diane's family, nor Diane's fiancé at the time, and we believe it could be a vital piece of evidence linking the killer to the scene. To date, more than 260 men have been screened and eliminated from the investigation, which was reopened in 2023. The investigation team has obtained most of the samples locally. However, screening has also taken place in Swansea, Perth, London, Hull and Newcastle, with the provision of voluntary DNA elimination samples. We believe there are people who have information or suspicions about the murder of Diane in 1986, and I would appeal to those people to come forward, as the information they have could be key to finding who the DNA belongs to. You may have been in the area of Borough Road on the night of the murder and may have seen someone acting suspiciously. If you were in the area or had concerns about an individual at the time, let us know so our team can trace and request a DNA sample from the person you suspect, or a relative of theirs if they have perhaps passed away or they have emigrated to another country. If you know any information, I will put contact details into the description box, so please reach out if you know anything. This case is deeply tragic, not only because Diane Sindall's life was so brutally cut short, but also because Peter spent nearly 4 decades in prison for a crime he didn't commit. Peter was not the Beast of Birkenhead, the Mersey Ripper, or the Wolfman. He was not the monstrous figure etched in the public's mind, yet he spent 38 years in Category A prisons for that crime. Now 68, Peter had tried twice before to overturn his conviction. His release came 38 years, 7 months, and 21 days after his arrest, a total of 14,113 days in custody. Tragically, this is not an isolated case. The Criminal Cases Review Commission, which ordered the DNA tests that led to the quashing of Peter's conviction, may see this as a partial redemption after facing severe criticism over its mishandling of the Andy Malkinson case. Andy Malkinson's 20-year-old rape conviction was overturned 2 years ago by the Court of Appeal, also thanks to DNA evidence. James Burley from the Legal Charity Appeal said, "Peter Sullivan's exoneration provides further evidence that our current appeal system cannot be trusted to swiftly identify and rectify miscarriages of justice." Between them, Peter Sullivan, Andrew Malkinson, and Victor Neelan spent over 70 years wrongly imprisoned before finally being exonerated by compelling DNA evidence. Each had their cases previously rejected by both the Court of Appeal and the Criminal Cases Review Commission, the institutions which are meant to act as our justice system's safety net. The case for an urgent overhaul of the appeal system is now overwhelming. A Criminal Cases Review Commission spokesperson said, "We do regret that we were not able to identify Mr. Sullivan's conviction as a potential miscarriage of justice in our first review. As an organisation, we are committed to taking forward learning from previous reviews, and we continue to develop our understanding around forensic opportunities." Peter has walked free at last, but no one can return the 38 years, 7 months, and 21 days he lost. What justice looks like for a man caged nearly 4 decades for something he didn't do is still uncertain. According to the House of Commons Library, Peter can apply for compensation through the Miscarriage of Justice Compensation Scheme, but that process is neither swift nor guaranteed. The final decision rests with the Justice Secretary, and while some payouts have reached as high as £500,000, only 39 cases have been granted a compensation out of 591 applications since 2016. For those like Peter, even the maximum payout of £1 million cannot replace a stolen lifetime. And while Peter may finally begin to rebuild what's left of his life, Diane's family are still left in the dark, still waiting for truth, still waiting for justice. Nearly 40 years later, her murder remains unsolved. This is not just a story of wrongful conviction, it's the story of 2 families shattered. One man robbed of his freedom, one woman robbed of her future, and both still waiting for justice in different, devastating ways. As always, my heart goes out to Diane Sindall and her family. They deserve answers, and they deserve justice. And to Peter, I truly hope you can now find peace and joy in the freedom that was so cruelly denied for so long.